Ian Garry did good work leading up to the 5th round, and I'm assuming that was the game plan, and you want to come out and start hugging and shaking hands and, you know, tell him how fucking great he is when they're putting the belt on you. It's just he might never have that opportunity again, and probably will never get the opportunity at Islam again. Be a fucking nice guy when that 5 minutes is up. You be as nice and as classy as, you know, you have 5 minutes to try to fucking finish one of the greatest of all time and have that belt wrapped around your waist. And from then on, you can tell Islam you love him and how great he is, and you can shake his hand and hug him and take pictures with him or whatever you want to do. You have 5 fucking minutes to win. That was my point.
Dana White just torched Ian Garry for wasting his biggest opportunity hugging Islam instead of hunting the finish. With only 5 minutes to steal the belt, Dana says Garry should have fought like his entire career depended on it. Now, what is the story behind it? Let's dive in. When asked about, Dana White fires back at the idea that Ian Garry simply needed to annihilate Islam, saying the real issue was what Garry did with his once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He believed Ian had done the hard work to reach the 5th round, but then failed to capitalize when it mattered most. Dana's frustration is clear. You fight your entire life for that moment, so why waste it when the belt is right there?
Yeah, I've got just a question going back to last week with Ian Machado Garry going into that 5th round. I was just curious, like you said, you wanted to you know, you would have liked him to go out there and annihilate, you know, the champion in the 5th round. Do you think—
I didn't say I would have liked him to do that. What I said was, you know, you get this opportunity, you've worked your whole life to get there, and you come out in the 5th round after you do all this great work, which I thought I literally said to Hunter.
However, Dana White says Ian Garry had Islam exactly where he needed him, especially after seeing Islam spend the fight holding him against the fence. But when the 5th round arrived, Dana was stunned to see Garry hugging and praising Islam instead of attacking for the finish. With his biggest opportunity on the line, Dana's message was brutal. Every second counted, and Ian simply couldn't afford to waste it.
When the 1st round started, Islam had him up against the fence and was holding on to him and trying to, I said, if this is a game plan for 5 fucking rounds, Islam's going to be in big trouble in the 5th round, in my opinion. And I thought that Ian Garry did good work leading up to the 5th round, and I'm assuming that was the game plan, and you want to come out and start hugging and shaking hands and, you know, tell him how fucking great he is when they're putting the belt on you. It's just he might never have that opportunity again. And probably will never get the opportunity at Islam again, who is going to go down as, you know, one of the all-time greats, if not the greatest, by the time he's done. So you have 5 fucking minutes. Every second of that round counts. Don't waste 10 seconds telling this guy you fucking love him.
Dana White says you either have that monster mentality or you learn the hard way from a mistake like this. He insists Ian Garry can be as nice and classy as he wants, but not while those 5 minutes are still on the clock. Dana's message is savage. You had 5 minutes to finish one of the greatest fighters ever and take the belt. Once that clock hits 0, shake hands, hug Islam, and show respect. But before that, go take the damn belt.
You either have it or you don't, in my opinion, or you made the mistake one time and you won't do it again. You know, we'll see how it plays out. And again, I'm not shitting on Ian. I mean, he's a classy guy. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, but be a fucking nice guy when that 5 minutes is up. You can be as nice and as classy as, you know, you have 5 minutes to try to fucking finish one of the greatest of all time and have that belt wrapped around your waist. And from then on, you can tell Islam you love him and how great he is, and you can shake his hand and hug him and take pictures with him or whatever you want to do. You have 5 fucking minutes to win.
By playing a clip of Joe Rogan, Rogan is sounding the alarm. Islam Makhachev looked far more devastating at 155, crushing elite opponents with a level of dominance that hasn't been as obvious at 170. The difference is brutal. At lightweight, Islam's strength and top pressure looked overwhelming, making fighters like Gaethje, Poirier, and Oliveira pay the price. Now the question is explosive. Did Islam leave his most dangerous version behind when he moved up to welterweight?
To Justin Gaethje. Look at what he did to Dustin Poirier. Look at what he did to Charles Oliveira.
I mean, even Moicano, it was like a round.
Just crushes him when he gets on top of him. This is the difference between him at 155 and him at 170. And you know, I mean, I understand what he wants to do, and I understand that he wants it, but man, if I was in his corner,
it's hard.
I'd be like, maybe.
It's hard to tell a man that is the yes.
Look at what he did.
However, James Lynch explained, Islam's move to 170 has exposed a side of him that simply wasn't as visible at 155, 2 straight welterweight fights, 2 decisions, and nowhere near the same finishing dominant. James Lynch points out that Ian Garry even outlanded Islam 29-22 in significant strikes, making the performance far closer than many expected. Yes, Islam still controlled the fight with 7 takedowns, but that only fuels the debate over whether his lightweight dominance was on another level. And that's exactly why Rogan's argument hits hard. Was Islam simply more dangerous when he was cutting down to 155?
You can see in this clip here, Rogan is kind of talking about how when Islam was at 155, you know, he was finishing fights. He looked a little bit more dominant than he has at 170. His 2 appearances at 170 have both been decisions. The last fight with Ian Garry. I mean, again, I had people in my live chat last week saying that Ian Garry won the fight. It was much closer. In fact, Garry actually did outland Islam 29-22 in significant strikes. Obviously, the big difference in the fight was the 7-15 takedowns from Islam. And also, I bring this up time and time again, I mean, the biggest part of this fight was Islam head kicking Garry, and that was the most significant part of the fight. So I think the decision was right. I don't have an issue with that, but it was maybe a bit closer for comfort for Islam, right? If you look at most of his performances, like if we go back and look at his tenure at lightweight, the only fight that was somewhat close was the Alex Volkanovski fight. The rest of these were finishes, and they were pretty dominant wins for the most part. Now, some of this had to do with opposition that he fought. Some of these earlier fights like Arman and Davy Ramos were decisions as well, as far as the performances that Islam's had, but overall he's been much more dominant at 155, at least recently, than he has been at 170.
Islam may have looked more dominant at 155, but James Lynch is exposing the dangerous price behind that dominance, the brutal weight cut. He points back to Islam's lightweight weigh-ins, where the champion looked completely drained, raising serious questions about how much longer he can keep forcing his body down to 155. At this stage of his career, the real danger may not be his opponents. It could be what that savage weight cut is doing to Islam himself.
Look how drained Islam is here. You can see it. I mean, I don't have to show you the actual video here, but he was cutting a lot. And I know that was a big thing about him moving up, was that, you know, how much longer could he do the weight cut? And Islam kind of falls in that age range right now at 34. He's going to be 35 in October. It's probably not the best to be cutting that much weight later in his career. So while I do agree with Rogan that his performances have been more dominant at 55 against some pretty good opposition, with that comes the tough weight cut, and how many times can he do that? Obviously at 170, if we look at the most recent weigh-in here with Ian Garry, you'll see here, looks a lot healthier, right? I mean, that's just a little small sample size there, but you look at Islam there, he looks much better. He's not sucked in. Looks like it's a good weight. Obviously, he's still cutting weight.
At 170, James Lynch sees a serious danger waiting for Islam. Carlos Prates and Michael Morales possess the kind of knockout power that can change everything with one clean shot. Islam dominated JDM, but Lynch warns that these bigger welterweights bring a completely different level of danger, especially with Morales' proven power. The question is now terrifyingly simple. Can Islam's elite grappling survive against 170-pound monsters who can shut his lights off?
Let's look at the options at 170, even though I've kind of already shown my hand here and given you my answer, but let's look at some of the options, right? You've got Carlos Prates as a potential option here. Thing I wonder, and I've said this before, I do wonder, can Islam take a punch like that at 170? That's one thing we haven't seen. Listen, JDM, yes, he has power. Does he have one punch knockout power? Not really. We haven't really seen that from JDM in a lot of his fights. Not against good opposition anyways. Sure, JDM can knock out your, Pete Rodriguez's, but Islam dominated that fight, looked great. Wasn't able to finish JDM, but still looked good in that fight, so I'm not really worried about that. But again, if we're going to go into tiers of knockout artists at 170, to me there's a tier, and that A tier includes Prates and Michael Morales, in my opinion. Those are in their own tier. So there is that risk. If Islam fights Carlos Prates or Morales, he could get knocked out. What's his only knockout only loss in his career? Kind of, again, reveal my hand there. It was a knockout loss to Adriano Martins, over a decade ago. Now, I'm not saying that that's a guaranteed to happen, but there is that risk there. If Prates and Morales fight Islam, there is that, opportunity for them to potentially knock him out. And you look at how big Morales is, there's going to be a lot of power behind those punches too with Morales. Again, knocked out Sean Brady, right? So that's impressive. We already talked about the close fight with Garry. He already beat JDM. Sean Brady would be an interesting fight just in terms of, the wrestling. Brady's a great wrestler, but
The 170-pound division gets far more dangerous when you look beyond the obvious names. Sean Brady brings elite wrestling, while Gabriel Bonfim adds another layer of submission and knockout danger. But James Lynch sees a clear difference. Most of these welterweights simply don't pose the same all-around threat as the elite names waiting at 155. That's the twist. 155 may offer bigger and more well-rounded challenges, while 170 gives Islam fresh opponents, but also dangerous knockout artists like Prates and Morales. And despite all that, Lynch doubles down. Islam should stay at 170 because going back to that brutal 155-pound cut simply isn't worth it.
Is the stand-up. Bilal Muhammad knocked him out, Morales knocked him out. That's somewhat of a kryptonite for Sean Brady. So that, again, that would be more of a wrestling fight similar to say Islam fighting Arman or something along those lines, right? That's where that style matchup comes in. Then you've got Gabriel Bonfim, also has, I don't know if I put Bonfim in that same category as Prates and Morales, but he's pretty close there, maybe a B tier as far as knockout power. But again, we saw Bonfim in that last outing, and of course he's fighting Brady coming up here, and he could win that fight. Wouldn't put it past him, just one loss there. Did knock out Randy Brown, beat Bilal Muhammad in his last fight. Didn't finish Bilal, but still has some sort of power as well, as we've seen more so earlier in his career. But more of a submission guy if we're talking about Bonfim. I only bring him up because he does have knockout wins, but I wouldn't, again, put him in that, category of like a real threat in the knockout department. And Gabriel Bonfim's not going to submit Islam Makhachev. I highly doubt that happens. And then after that, that's where things sort of fall off. You got a lot of older fighters here. Bilal Lewis, even if Buckley beats Malad, I wouldn't put him as a threat. Euros Medic, I think, has been on a very generous win streak. I don't really look at him as much of a threat. Actually, Medic's more of that B tier knockout power thing, but also Medic fighting some easier opposition here. And then you got Usman, etc., etc. So I think overall, I think some of these fights at 170 maybe aren't as big as some of the fights at 155. Like, I think name value wise, the names that I just mentioned here, Gaethje, Topuria, Saryukin, Oliveira, Holloway, Pimblett, Salkeld, these names are a bit bigger than some of the names at 170. But I think as far as well-roundedness, the fighters at 155, I think, are more well-rounded than some of the guys that he could face at 170. Like, let's be honest here. He's going to be fighting either Prates or Morales next. I don't think there's much of a mystery there, right? But he's got to be careful. Those guys, again, can hit like a truck here.
The Weasle admits he's now seriously worried about Islam Makhachev at welterweight after what Ian Garry exposed. Gary's size, reach, and long lead hand created problems that Islam struggled to solve in the center of the octagon. And that's the scary part. Garry showed a blueprint that bigger, more powerful welterweights can exploit even more brutally. If fighters like Prates or Morales bring that same range with real killer instinct, Islam could be walking into a completely different nightmare.
Islam Makhachev versus the welterweights. I got asked a lot about my opinions as to whether Islam can beat these other guys coming off of the Ian Garry fight. Did my opinions change on this? Yeah, somewhat. I'm very scared for Islam Makhachev, actually, for what comes ahead. He just got past Ian Garry by the skin of his teeth. It was a very close fight. Garry did much better than most people thought he was going to. And not just the result of it, but the problems that Islam ran into could be similar problems against these other welterweights who are even bigger than Garry. He finally faced one of the giants of 170. Ian Garry is massive, right? And the height, reach, the approach, all affected the fight from the striking to the grappling. And Islam had a hard time with the jab. He had a hard time with the lead hand getting around it, except when he used the takedown. But his striking was usually falling short when they're in the center of the octagon and Garry just keeping that long lead hand extended on him, holding that range at all times. Islam even said after the fight that this approach from Garry threw him off. It was a problem for him. So Ian Garry shed light on defeating Islam that other welterweights can also exploit, but with much more power and ruthless killer instinct. These are the things that a lot of people were saying.
Adding more, the Weasle warns that Michael Morales' massive frame and 79-inch reach could turn every exchange into a nightmare for Islam Makhachev. If Islam shoots from too far out, Morales can intercept him with an uppercut or a brutal clubbing shot before he ever gets the takedown. And if Islam misjudges the range like he did against Ian Garry, Morales has the power and athleticism to make him pay instantly. At this size and reach, one tiny mistake from Islam could trigger a fight-ending explosion from Morales.
Morales' killer instinct will have him ready to KO Islam at any slip-up. If Islam miscalculates a takedown, due to Morales' unusual stance where he pulls his hips back, You saw Sean Brady wasn't able to get a good distance on getting on those hips. It was so far away, and him holding you back in that 79-inch reach also causes that. So if Islam shoots a takedown, he doesn't get it because he's too far away, there could be an uppercut to intercept him or some big clubbing shot from Morales to put him away. Or if Islam misjudges the range like he did multiple times against Garry in the stand-up, he's getting clubbed. Morales is also the most athletic guy at 170. For a guy that big to move like this is ridiculous. Like, he's on a different athletic level than anybody else there. So these two monsters are really what we're talking about here, who are significantly longer than even Garry, and Islam had a problem with that reach against Garry too. Compared to that fight, every single shot from Prates and Morales is going to feel nuclear for Islam.
Wrapping it up, the Weasle calls Michael Morales the most dangerous matchup for Islam Makhachev, and the reasons are absolutely brutal. Morales has the size, 79-inch reach, knockout power, wrestling, and judo to make Islam work harder than ever for every takedown. That massive frame combined with his power means every shot Islam takes could carry serious danger, while Morales can make his single leg attempts extremely difficult, and with that ridiculous reach controlling the distance, Islam could be walking into a nightmare where one mistake changes everything.
Michael Morales. He's the biggest guy in the division. He has the longest reach in the rankings. He has knockout power. He comes from a wrestling and judo background, which is something that Prates lacks. Prates is more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He will give up the takedown that we saw against Leon and JDM. Even after he got surprised by the first one against JDM, he couldn't defend the second one. Morales is going to be harder to take down, and I think even harder to hold down due to the wrestling and judo, as well, of course, as his physical size advantage. He's going to be so incredibly strong. Islam's going to need something extra every single time he tries to take him down, while being at risk of getting knocked out, every single shot hurting him much more than against Garry. And that reach is going to be so difficult. You see the way that Morales stands. I mean, look here against Sean Brady. Hips pulled back. He was throwing that jab in his face, and Brady couldn't get around it too well. He was trying to land some punches. He reached for the takedown, just wasn't close enough. Now, Islam, of course, is on a different level, but Morales is going to be prepared for that single leg takedown. That is what Islam used against Garry to get past that reach. Morales is going to learn from that and adjust his game plan around it. And at 79 inches, that jab is going to be so disruptive.
In the end, Dana White says Ian Garry had the biggest opportunity of his career but failed to attack when it mattered most. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan and James Lynch question whether Islam Makhachev is still as devastating at 170 as he was at 155. The brutal weight cut may have made Islam more dominant, but staying at welterweight could protect him from that dangerous drain. Yet 170 brings terrifying knockout threats like Carlos Prates and Michael Morales, making Islam's next challenge even more dangerous. Now, the real question is simple. Did Islam sacrifice his most destructive version by moving up to welterweight? Ian Garry may have missed his moment, but Islam's move to 170 has opened an entirely different war, with dangerous knockout artists waiting and the 155-pound cut behind him. Islam's next move could define the next chapter of his career. So, is welterweight truly Islam's best division, or did he leave his most dangerous version at lightweight? If you enjoyed the breakdown, smash that like button and share this video with another UFC fan. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more heated UFC breakdowns, reactions, and fight analysis.